Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. My next guest is I4UFH Fabio Scatino. He may correct me on my pronunciation, but I think I've got it close to being right. I'm very interested in this conversation. I've talked to several ham radio operators in Europe that have had a lot of great things to say about Fabio. He has touched a lot of different elements in ham radio contesting, from contest superstations with great histories to SO2R, logging software. The list is pretty impressive. I think it spans over 45 years, but we're going to find out for sure. Fabio, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you very much to have invited me to join your event. That's really very happy to be one of the Europeans that you can interview in your event.
Well, as I said, your name has come up in a lot of conversations, both on camera and off camera. So clearly you've made a lot of impact on ham radio in Europe. So again, excited to have this conversation. Let's begin where I always begin, Fabio. Tell me about your background, getting your ham radio license, and how that all happened.
Yeah, well, I started to be interested in ham radio when I was 15 years old, so of about 50 years ago. I was starting with SWL license. And after a couple of years, I got my ham radio license in 1978 and got my call sign I4UFH, and it's still there. And I have spent a lot of years, the first years of my ham radio life, to catching the X, getting honor roll, and more or less in up about 10 years. In the meantime, I was interested in contesting. I started contesting in 1982, operating multi-multi from Italy, Yankee 4, Florida Golf Mike. This is the memorial station of Marconi House. I live in not far from, up about 15 minutes from the house of William Marconi.
So it didn't take you long to get involved with contesting. 4 years, you're still pretty young. What was the motivation that took you from DXing to contesting?
Well, it's mostly one of my characteristics, because I am mostly competitive, guys. So I even when I was looking for even when I was choosing the X, looking for to be one of the first to work someone, because I love to be the first one. I can try to be. So contesting was the first step, because I was involved in contesting from several friends that operating from the Marconi house. And at that time, they asked to me, well, do you want to be one of us? We made a multi-multi in 4 people, and no more than 2,000 cues, but was really the first sparkling that started me to be involved in contesting. And after that, I had several opportunities to join contestation. At that time, I was the only one that have knowledge of computers, because my main business was computer at that time. So no one knows nothing about that. So I was the only one that came setting up a CT on all the XT computer with green display and so on. So several was interested to this to my activity, and I was interested to be contesting, so we joined us together.
So there's so many different directions I want to go in, and one of the things on my list is some feedback I got from some of your colleagues in Europe. Somebody told me that you were known as the father of the 3-point Italian islands, and that you had gone to the ARRL to have those islands, or an island, move from Italy, Europe, to Africa. And maybe that was IG9A, or you'll have to correct me. Tell me more about that. What was the genesis of that idea that those islands should be considered as part of Africa, and what was the process that you took?
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of years from 87 to more or less 90 operating from a top of a water tower with Italy Radio 4 Tango cosine. Was in a 70-meter water tower with on the top we had several delta loop antennas, and we got to be more interested to have more scores and more advanced scores, because from Italy you can at least have a good results of first in Italy, sometime good scores from Europe, but we need to look for something more better. In the meantime, we had with a couple of friends analyzed what was the rules of some countries that were was divided into over two continents, like Tango Alpha, TA1 or TA5, European Turkey or Asiatic Turkey. And so we have analyzed realized at least that a couple of islands in Italy was on the African platform, geographically on the African platform. So we have introduced our friends at the university to write a documentation about that, and we have proposed it to K3EST, at that time was CQWW contest director, that Lampedusa and was added, can be added as a new multiplier, new country, splitting Italy in two. This can't be done for obviously ARL, because there is no details related to be a separate country, but it's been added as a European multiplier, like WADC rules. So Italy for CQWW is split in two, Italian Italy and African Italy. At that time, that was 1995. We met several guys that are almost my friends, because we started from up about 30 years ago to be friends, and we started a new adventure from Lampedusa Island. I was India Gulf 9 in CQWW 96 or 95 and 96 and so on, until a big multi-multi in 2000 with over 25 operators all over from Italy. That was one of the first activity that involved a lot of Italians. We kept couple of big truck to go into the island. So really an amazing. We have a lot of videos. It could be very interesting to see them again. Sometime we spent time to do that, and was one of our first time that we operated from a 3-point places. Unfortunately, that year in 1999 also CN2WW, sorry, went multi from Morocco, so we will be second in the world, but at least first in Africa, because the first in the CQWW, the first one don't count for the continent winner, no? But nevertheless, we have done it again in 2000, and we win in 2000. So we had a very interesting experience, like friendship, exchanging of information, the technical details, a lot of interesting stuff. That is what we expect from a group that working together.
Tell me more about IG9A. What was the station like in 2000?
The station was a completely field day station. We bring a couple of back truck with all the stuff, and we have installed it in over 500 meters, six separate stations, in van, in containers, and each station had, at that time, we had coax cable network with our RG58 network, computer network, with several PCs like all the 386, just for fun. And radios, amplifiers, everything was installed, and towers. We have installed towers, 24-meter towers for 20 meter, 15-meter towers for 15, with a 4x4 vertical on 180, one vertical on 160. That's really an incredible job. Everything done in 1 week. and Monday morning, everything was dismantled. We have tried for 2 years. The second years we had the 3 element for 40 meter, and the second year on 20 meter we had a 5/5 to Europe and 5/5 to US. So a lot of stuff, and was really amazing.
That's insane. The idea that you would haul that much gear over for a 1 week effort and one contest is just an amazing story. I want to take you back to the mushroom that I've heard about before, and it sounds like an incredible station, IR4T. I've actually talked to some operators that operate from there. Tell me the background there. How did you get access to the mushroom, and what was there?
Well, the mushroom, it's located in not far from my city, up about 25 kilometers in the middle from Bologna City and Modena City, in the north and center part of Italy, more or less 200 kilometers south of Milan. And it's we had that kind of authorization to use that place because we were involved into civil services, emergency services that the mayor of the city have asked to amateur radio to help him to have a good place to managing communication, VHF, UHF communication with the repeaters and so on. So this was a 70-meter high tower. So we asked to him, well, no problem, this is a good place for VHF, but maybe also for HF. They didn't take care that we installed a delta loop for 40 meter with a 2-element delta loop with a 50-meter leg length and 5-element Yagi for 15. We had probably it was the only one station that the shack was over the 160-meter antenna, because the shack was on the top and we had a 2-element wire on 160 white space so it was interesting stuff. We had two-element on 40 meter for delta and 3-element on 80 meter. We had some trouble with the neighbors, but at least we have the support of the mayor of the city. So more or less we didn't have any more issues. And from that we had got a lot of Italian records. Most of these records are still alive, or for Italian records, mainly on CW. Stefano, IK2QEI, spent 14 years with me at Mushroom. And also Luca, IK2NCJ, was frequently operator from there. And we had a good satisfaction because we had set a couple of European records, mainly on ARL 10 meter. And ARL DX still the record is still on, and from CQWW and WPX was the main. Unfortunately, we didn't have at that time a lot of space because it was a 20-meter cycle on the top of the Mushroom, so we didn't have a lot of space for installing multi-directional antennas or multiplier antennas and so on. But so the CQWW was mostly of the time a little bit limited, and we were single operator, at least single operator, single band. But WPX, that is, you don't need a lot of big antenna efforts, was one of our preferred contests. And ARL, well, you can work West Coast beaming South America when the band is closed, and only from the Mushroom can be done. The antenna were almost at 70 meters above the ground level, so at least like in a free space.
So again, I heard a lot of feedback from different European operators. One of the things I heard from E77DX was your background with contest logging analyzer software. Tell me more about that.
I had a computer background starting from 80s. So because I was degrees in computer technology at that time, and was frequently interested to analyzing logs and just to understand where can we do better. And at that time, up about 2003, 2004, I was also interested to building a SO2R interface, mostly because I was interested to programming microprocessor, and that I need to have something to do, something to finalize my idea. Well, I have developed an SO2R device called Easy Master. I have sold up about 200 pieces at that time. That was not too bad. It was at that time an advanced device. And after spending a lot of time to contesting in the last couple of 4 years ago, during pandemic season, at least a month, I started to want to learning a new languages, computer languages, because I am a Mac user. So I preferred to have to develop software on that platform. But I have tried to do also something that was a cross-platform. So developing on Mac, but available on both platform, Mac and Windows. And so I have started to have another ideas to analyze with new different tools, blocks, like viewing tools, no maps, bar graphics, a lot of stuff about that. What that was not available at the Windows 3.1 era. No? And so I have developed this software that is a contest log analyzer. That is a tool that allows to comparing several logs simultaneously. Maybe your log with your previous year or your log with your buddy, friends, just to analyze where he had worked more multiplied than you on that band and so on. No? And this is good, interesting stuff just to spend more timing, because I loved everything that is involved in ham radio, even contesting, but hardware, software. For me, contesting and radio at least is a kind of lifestyle. It's not like it's not single note. Also, my wife knows that.
So, Fabio, clearly you mentioned earlier that you're competitive, and the stations you've been associated with have all been competitive, whether it be IG9A, IR4T. But you also then went to Cape Verde and started, I think, operating from Delta 44 Tango Delta, and then eventually D4C. Tell me what put Cape Verde on the map for you. Was it the fact that it was a 3-point amazing location in the Atlantic?
Well, after a couple of experience from IG9A, we had understood that the problem was the location, but everyone knows that. And try to look for the best one, the best spot around the world, not far from Europe. Even several Echo Alpha 8 or several Charlie November station were active from that time, like JIM, CN2R or CN2AA and so on. We have clearly found that D4 should be an interesting spot from us. Very few activity in the last years, last decades at least, from D44 BC up about 25 years ago. And I and a couple of friends like Luca, K2 and CJ take a decision to spend 1 week on a holiday in Cape Verde like any tourist, and look for some place, some friends. In the meantime, a friend of mine from Portugal, CT1 Delta Victor Victor, that a good friend of mine, had a friend that moved to Sal Island just a few months early our visit. So we meet him, and we agree with him that we can install antennas at KISS QTH, and he can use the antennas where we are not there for contest. And so in September September 2021, we shipped a lot of stuff from Europe to Cape Verde and started in 2000 in October for CQWW. We installed everything, a couple of towers with simple antennas, and we really didn't know what we really need. So 2 towers, tri-banders, 2 element for 40, piece of wire for 80 and 160. And we made more than 10,000 queues, and we broken the all-time score at that time. Wow. And we were also on the cover of CQ. And so this was the start of the adventure. After a few years on that place in Sile Island, we moved to another island where Delta 4 Bravo was active a few years early. But at that time, he decided to stop his operation from that place. And so we have got an agreement with him to use his land. We buy the land, and we reinstall again everything, new towers, new antennas, and so on. And just for the next 11 years I was there, we had almost more than 65 flights to Cape Verde in that 10, 11 years. And in 2017, I stopped my activity from there, just because after one cycle, I have understood that we got a lot of really extremely good results. And what we expected if our project, our target was obtained. So I was looking for something more different. I was my interest was really to understand propagation from different places in the world. In the meantime, in 2015, I was at Fox Yankee 5 Kilo Echo, acting from Caribbean area. In 2018, I was in Echo Alpha 8 from Echo Fox 8 Radio. In 2014, I was also in Charlie Norway 2 Radio, like guest operator of Jim. So I love to understand how propagation is moving around the world, and really interested to know more. And so I left the team of D4C, but really we had spent in the last decades, in the last some podcast cycle, a lot of good scores, worldwide scores, records that are still alive. Well, this was one of my main activity in my life.
So more recently, where were you operating in 2024?
Yeah, this year I was active from into the ARL contest and WPX from India Yankee 4 Fox Golf Mary from Marconi Station. And in CQWW I was to India 9 Papa, a Sicilian station that was built from a friend of mine, 99 EEQ, that he was one of the first guys that I met when I was in IG9A. So we know together up about 25 years. And he built this station in the southern part of Sicily, and as a multi station. That's a really good one. And I frequently spend 1 week at SQTH, where he has a fantastic setup. You can eat a lot of good food and drink a lot of good wine. So it's a good week at the end of October.
So Fabio, the World Radio Sport Team Championship took place in Italy, scheduled for 2022, and ended up being delayed until 2023 because of COVID. But I think you were very integral to that happening. Tell me about the background about bringing the WRTC to Italy.
Well, WRTC, it's probably the most amazing event that I had organized. Frequently, all the contests, or mainly the main contest, like multi or multi-complex operator contest, was most of the time I was involved in the organization. And WRTC was one idea that came out from in 2017. I was in WRTC from 5 times, from 1996 in California. I was in Finland, in Slovenia, in Brazil. So I spent almost 25 years of my time during WRTC be there with friends or like a judge or like a competitors, but it's really an event that I love it. In 2017, we met a lot of old friends, at least old friends that we asked us together, well, how we want to spend our next 6 years of life? Well, WRTC was a good option. In 2018, we had asked to the sanction committee that we were interested to be the next organizer of 2022, and so on. We have spent a lot of time to explain our declaration, what we really want to do for the WRTC. And at the end of the WRTC in Germany, 2018, they announced that Italy will be the next host. So at that time, the problems start to be big problems. Because everything need to be coordinating, everything need to be decided with who at least 1 month early were your friends, now is your your business friends, because as you know, most of the time the problem is funding money and so on, because it's not a matter of installing antenna, it's not a matter of organizing in a restaurant, it's a matter of look for enough fund to do that. But we have done it. Unfortunately, the COVID didn't help us, because most of the time no one want to have foreign people in his land when you put the tent and so on. We have decided to move to 2023. Things was more better. We have 1 more year to collecting more fund for the support of the WRTC. We had a lot of interesting from all over the world, but mainly the 35% of interesting from US Americans, because also Americans as was the 25% of operators were from US, so most support from there. Several US companies like Flex Radio, like ICOM, like small manufacturer was really interested to support us. And in 2023 July, before July, we started the adventure. What an amazing! I didn't sleep I sleep at probably 3 hours per night, because at 5 o'clock in the morning there is all the morning something to do. And we have spent also the last couple of weeks before the beginning to look for more 10 places, 10 sites, because we have a very bad flow in the area that we have still just installed antennas, and we need to move them to another area. So dismantling everything, installing everything in other places was terrible. But okay, we are here, and the competitor was very happy. We were very happy, and very few compliance. So just a good thing to do at that time of my life.
So one of the distinctions at the WRTC 2022, you used bed and breakfasts, what we would refer to as a bed and breakfast in the U.S. instead of tents. What was behind that decision? Why not put tents in a field, and why did you move toward the bed and breakfast as contest states?
The main problem was, as I explained to you earlier, that looking for a piece of land that could be rented was not so easy. Not easy because most of the farmer want to have an insurance about that nothing happened, nothing. So it was really costly. It's only a matter of money, at least. Renting, you need to include the generator, fuel, tent, people that stay at the night where when the tent was up at the put it up or not. Using a bed and breakfast was an easy solution. Surely some probable, not surely the best solution for an antenna or for interference. But surely we had spent less money at least, and we have minimized the organization. And so at that time we take this decision to move to the bed and breakfast. We have a good agreement with our region, our mayors in all the main cities. And so we have proposed to them to get a good advertising of their activity. So that was a solution that at that time we had in our hands. Surely the competitor was very happy. Air conditioning places for almost all the stations. Good food, because there was filled of good food for almost 24 hours. And yeah, we had some issues with some location with that when we have tested them, there was no interference. But what happened that some photovoltaic systems, or a noising generator from inverters showing up during the day, and so at least we had 5 sites of backup that we moved the operator to another places. But it's a matter of organization. The last station was fixed Saturday morning, few years before the contest. But nevertheless, everything was okay, and was a very amazing event. We met up about 700 people from all around the world, more than 45 countries. We had, I remember very well, with JT1 BG was coming from Mongolia, and so was very happy to have him, his wife, for a couple of days from South America, obviously from Asia, and from Pacific areas also away. My competitor was from away too. We at that time we had ensured that all the competitors from Europe of our board had the same opportunity to join the WRTC, because the WRTC is an event that need to be. It's not only for the top guns. It's need to be an event for the best ones. But sometimes it's not the top gun, because sometimes the best one didn't have place or set up to be a Top Gun. But there is several American operator, at least, that are very extremely good operator that didn't have the opportunity to be joining Kansas Station. And really, this is not a good thing, but we have found that someone have spent a lot of interest to this side of our intent to have the opportunity to allow everyone to operate from in WRTC.
So, Fabio, speaking of Top Guns, WRTC 2026 is just around the corner. We're only a year and a little bit more away. Given your experience with ham radio contesting and your experience with WRTC in Italy, who are the ham radio operators we should be watching that will make the cut for 2026? Who are some of the best contesters in the world, in your opinion?
Yeah, okay, this is a good question. Well, surely the new generation, at least under 50 years, because I call them new generation, and 6MJ, KL9A, CR6 Kilo, CT1 ILT was surely the top ones. Echo 770X, obviously Brazo have done an extremely good job in the last CQWWCW there. But there are surely some countries that can have a new generation of operator that can be a good ones. Someone can be show up during WRTC if the selection would be done extremely accurate. I mean more mostly in US where you have 10 areas from 0 to 9 that each area can have several operators from them, and surely there are some under 35 years boys that have the opportunity to show at the community that they are not only the top gun, but they are also some middle gun that became a top gun. The power is it's on the hand of few, because even all these 4 or 5 people have a superstation around the board, so they have the opportunity to enjoy all the contests, almost 15, 20 contests during the years, and so they can have a lot of practice, no? Even CW or SSB. Now on CW, the new technique of 2BSQ is one of the new frontier, no? And that can't be done in SSB, so the SSB need to be managed in a different way. Operators have different tools. On CW you can have reverse beacon. On SSB you can't have spots by reverse beacon, because now there is no SSB reverse beacon. And so contests in SSB need to be approached in a different way. Operator can show up in a different way because they're using different mode. But really, at least in Italy, we have a couple of good guys that probably can be selected. I don't know really, but probably yes, for the 2026. That is Filippo IZ1 LBG. That is Italian contest manager, but it's a 30 years old guy. And also Gabriele, IT9RGY, no? You know him? Gabriele, yeah. It's a good one. He is living in Poland, but he is a good one. And some operators from French, some young guys from French, and some guys from Hotel Alpha from Hungary. I don't remember the call sign, but they are too young for that, so I don't remember them. But really, there is a lot of opportunity for young contesters to develop this hobby. Even contestants have not been in the hobby, to develop this hobby and moving them to the future. Even ham radio is still an hobby that mostly are for young people as both, no? But the new generation, almost in Italy, our new, connecting to this new generation, and after WRTC, that we didn't stop anything about our activity. We have developed a new interesting agreement with ARI, Association of Amateur Radio in Italy. Just we are developing a contest school that allow the new gen to acquire the experience of the old ones and sharing together. Now we have the opportunity to remoting stations, so easy to make in a school, in a classroom online with remoting stations, and this is our next plans for the next years.
So Fabio, you've talked about the advancements with contesting, SO2R, 2BSIQ. You've also operated from some of the best contest stations in the world. You've built them with huge towers, lots of antennas. Tell me what it's like to participate in the WRTC and only have 100 watts, and you don't have all those other advancements to take advantage of. You've gone from a superstation, and now you're sitting not by yourself, but with a teammate with your 100 watts, maybe in a country that you've never traveled to before, so you don't understand the propagation. What is that like?
Well, surely most of the operators that come in Italy didn't know anything about the propagation from Europe. even from southern part of Europe, because in 2018, that where it was in Germany, the propagation is completely different. So from northern part of Italy, the propagation is really interesting, but surely if you have 100 watt, not the 1.5 kilo, not the stack 5/5 in several directions, well, some of them didn't beam the antenna in the right direction at the right time, and most of them at least. But we have made a lot of the advertisement before the WRTC with several events. We have made a lot of creating a multiple interest to the between the competitors and between the chaser of the competitor of the station. Adding a more we had a special cosine that was never before supplied. So we had real-time scoring with several hours real-time. So we have built up a lot of interest around WRTC, and that they didn't miss pileup. They made more than 5,000 queues in 24 hours, so really was amazing for everyone. And also on low band, even everyone thought that 100 watt simple dipole on 80 meter, the antenna is almost on the ground. Well, someone did more than 200 QSOs hour on CW on 80 meters, so it wasn't a matter. The problem is that you need to have the good environment, and we have tried to building up this before WRTC and during WRTC. We had used a new technology that generate SSB spot. We had all the logs of all competitors online in real time, so we can spot them after 3 QSOs on the same mode, on the same frequencies. So we generate a spot. So similar to RBN, no? Just to improve it, to add more fun, mainly on the SSB. Because most of the time WRTC was in a CW contest. But if the operators was selected with the results of both mode, SSB, CQWW, CQSSB, and so on, so the operator need to prove that he is capable also on SSB, not only on CW. No, it's not a matter of power, not a matter of dipole. It's only a matter that you need to go to 3799 and make a call. And surely don't worry. Someone call you and someone spot you.
So Fabio, that's a good segue. I understand that you're primarily a single sideband contester. Tell me about that. What was that choice long ago that you were going to focus primarily on phone contesting?
When I got the license, I made also a CW examination. So it was only mainly related to the first contest I have done in my life in 1982, 87, and 90 was mainly with a group of guys that was phone contesters. So at least I didn't lose, but at least I prefer to do what can I do as my best can I do. I don't love to do one things and other things, but so I have preferred to be an SSB operator. Even most of my friends don't think what I am talking to you now. SSB contest is more difficult than CW contest, because on SSB you don't have time. Even when you transmit, even when you receive, you don't have time to do other things. Now with F1 to F7 key, you simple send CQ and you can spend a few seconds to look at the rotator positions or drinking a small pot of coffee and so on. SSB, you can do that. When you are running 300 QSOs hour, you can do that. And this has attracted me, and we had and was attracted to have a higher scores in rates. I have a record of 348 QSO hours from Cape Verde. And I have attracted to analyze how you can be faster, how you can use a different spelling for the words just to reduce the time between one QSO and another. So CW most of the time is only a matter of speed, but the character has the same length. You can change it, even you can change the speed, but if you can change speed, sometimes don't answer to you because you're too fast. And SSB is different. You can call or you cannot call, at least, or can make a different technique of growing up the pilot. On CW it's different, so I prefer it to be a phone contester just because I look for the different ways to be best off. Even I am not I am no one.
Fabio, when I look at the 46 years that you've spent in ham radio and most of that in contesting, you've always been seemingly focused on the next big thing, whether it be the next contest station or the WRTC. So I guess the question for you is, what's the next big thing in 2025?
Well, 2025, the plan is to improve this contest school that we have started last year. And I have a couple of plans to operate outside Europe, probably ARL and WPX from Caribbean area. I was also PJ4G in 2019 for ARL, and probably will be back. And sure, I am planning something for CQWW, but this is it's not a secret plan, but it's almost a very early bird plan, so we can't talk about that. I am not sure. I surely have a license, but I need the people, and I need some fund to do that. But really, I will not stop.
So can you tell us where you'll be for WPX in the Caribbean?
I probably will be there in PJ4J too.
I'll look for you. I'll be in VP5.
Wow, okay. You will be single up?
A single up. Yep.
Single up, okay.
Yep. Still trying to decide if it's going to be low power or high power.
Okay, we need multiplier on board, not band. No.
Well, Fabio, I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today, and I really appreciate all you've done for ham radio over the past 46 years. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Kevin. You're very pleased to be with you. Best regards. And 73.
My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I've been talking to Fabio, I4UFH. Go to 3830 Scores, take a look at what he's done. He's obviously accomplished a lot in ham radio and really impacted contesting. I've been blessed to have him here today. 73, Fabio.
73, thank you.